For this study, we're looking at blues chords and more specifically the dominant seventh chords. Now, just a quick audio coverage. We get three very popular types of seventh chords. We get, for example, the seventh itself, the dominant seventh. That's a D7. Very popular for blues. Then we get a major 7, D major 7. Hear the difference? It's this note here. So major 7, nice and happy sounding chord, very popular for jazz. Dominant 7, you can hear it gets almost like a darker sort of tonality to it. And then the minor 7, which is nice for sort of like a funky. Very popular for that again. So one more quick recap: dominant 7, major 7, and minor 7. Okay, for this study, predominantly dominant 7s the whole way through. Now, just quickly, what is a dominant 7th chord? Now, A dominant 7th or E dominant 7th are simply written as A7 or E7. So when you see no M sign or MAJ for major sign, that simply means dominant 7th. Okay, now how are chords built? For those that know a little bit about chord structure, you take a major scale, so for example your A major, as soon as we're going to start with the A7th chord, and you go through your Do, Re, Mi. I'm sure you recognize that. And the chords are built from using every alternative note within that scale. So in other words, if you count the notes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and we're just going to take it to the octave, and I start in 1, I skip the 2, I play the 3, skip the 4, play the 5. You can actually hear I'm playing every other note, the first, the third, the fifth, and then we want the 7th as well. Now that note there actually isn't going to work for A7th. A7th wants the sound. And if I do this, for example, it's a nice blues sound, but if I go, definitely not a good blues sound here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do what they call flatten the 7th, and this gives us the dominant 7th sound. What this basically comes down to is we're taking your first, third, fifth, 7th note, we're going to lower it, flatten it, that's the terminology, and we're going to play this note here. So you're going to have 1, 3, 5, flat 7, and if you want to include the octave, you can do that as well, and those notes make up the A7th arpeggio. Similarly, if I wanted D7th, I'd take the same shape, and this is important, we need to know shapes. Recognize the same finger notation here? Same notation and finger sequence as the A7th there. And eventually when you get to E, so other than being a cool sort of almost boogie vibe, you're actually getting to hear the individual independent notes that make up the chords A7, D7 and E7. Okay, and if I arpeggiate them, listen to this. And then eventually E7. Now, one thing we do need to know is all the names of the notes on your guitar. So if somebody says to you, what's this note? You must say F sharp. If they say, what's this note? You must say E. Okay. Now that's quite a tall order to start with. So what I'd suggest is get to know all the notes on your E string and your A string for starters. Where that's going to help you, it will definitely give you good background for when you want to do bar chords, A major, because the bass note is here, or the root note. Root note is the correct terminology for bass note. It's the note from which the chord is built. So you're building A from here, and it gives you the A chord. There's a B note, B chord, C note. So as you can see, it was going to help you later with bar chords. And then obviously all the notes on the A string too. D's over there, for example, at fret 5, and E's at fret 7, for example. Okay, now we've covered the basic construction of the 7th chord. We can hear the arpeggio, so you've learned to play an arpeggio. And you can actually swing that as well. That also sounds quite cool as well. But what I want to do now is I want to go and look at the different shapes of the 7th chord, because basically what I want us to walk away from this study is I want us to know several different ways to play the 7th chord, and I want us to also know where and how we can apply this to a basic 12-bar blues progression in A. That's our goal for this particular tutorial. Okay, now I'm assuming you've got your PDF file in front of you. There's a whole lot of other different fun facts which are not that relevant to the video, but I'd like you to read through. If you're not sure with the fun facts, give me a WhatsApp or drop me an email. You're more than welcome. We are now going straight to point number 5, where it says 5 ways to play the 7th chord. Okay, now the first way is like this. Okay, now all the shapes I'm using, by the way, are not going to be open shapes, and what that means is I'm not using any open strings. So if you're familiar with a normal A7 that looks like this from maybe your original first books, the hassle with this here is if you move it, that sounds terrible. That doesn't sound too cool. That sounds ghastly. That one doesn't sound too bad. Not very, very nice. So not all chords are movable, but these ones are A7, B flat 7, B7. So you can move these chords. Now, each of the chords in point 5 is going to have a blue dot. The blue dot shows us the root note, or the note from where the chord was built in theory. So this note is actually A. This is the 7th shape, or one of the 7th shapes. So if I combine this A note with the 7th shape, A7th. If I go 2 frets up, that note is B. There's my 7th shape. I've got B7. Okay, it's as simple as that. Now, the next shape, the one to the immediate right, if you're working from left to right, is going to look like this. Okay. You need to get the pinky involved here as well. You can see the pinky at the bottom. And there's another way of playing a 7th shape. And you might be familiar with this one because it looks a lot like C7. In fact, it is C7, but without the open string included that you'd normally play. We want to move it, and that's what we said was the goal of here. We want to move the chords. So if I want to play D7, my blue note now for this diagram is on the 5th string. So this note is D. So D plus another 7th shape, D7. And if I play D7 here, you can hear it sounds the same. It's just got a different sort of overall tonality because of the voicing. But this and this are both D7. If I want E7, the finger that's tapping simply slides up to find the note E. There's E, E7. And so on. So this is the importance of getting to know where the notes are, getting to know the names of the notes on the strings. The next one, for those that know bar chords, this is probably a familiar one for you. It's the middle diagram. This is going to be D7 as well, and you can hear that this and this sounds similar, but it's got a sort of a different sort of effect to it due to the voicing. And a voicing is basically the terminology when you play the same chord in a different way. So this is one voicing for D7, this is another voicing for D7, and this is another voicing for D7. The same as I can play A7 here, A7 here, and A7 here. so my chords are movable. So it's very useful information for this. You're going to see why now. Bar chords continue the concept. Your bass note this time on the E6th string. I'm sure you're familiar and recognize the shape over here. And then lastly, this is my least favorite. I don't like this one. It just feels weird. Okay, I'm going to bring the guitar a bit closer. Finger 1, finger 2 is going to be on the 2nd string. Finger 3 and 4 on the 3rd and 1st strings accordingly. And now play the bottom 4 strings. Again, remember the blue dot is the root note. So this note is A, so this is A7. Root note now, going backwards. So the second one from the right is on the 6th string, also A7. Then I can play A7 all the way up here from fret 12 if I really want to get a high-pitched sort of voicing. Slightly less high-pitched voicing, also A7. And then I can jump all the way back down again to A7 over here. So what you're getting out of this over here is that every single 7th chord on this page, we are learning 5 ways to play it. The fine print, we need to know the notes on the neck. Now the next step is how to use it. Now basically a typical 12-bar blues in point 6 is listed there. It's 4 bars of A, 2 bars of D, 2 bars of A, and then 1 bar of E, D, A, and E after that. Now if you look at 7.1 quickly, it says some basic blues riffs. Now I'm sure you're familiar with this. Okay, typical standard blues. Okay, now this is a riff in A. Now I don't necessarily always want to go trying to demonstrate here is I'm substituting the chords, A7 for example, different A7 variations with the riffs over there in place of the chord A, because face it, if I go, that's not blues. So we're replacing the A with an A7th or an A tonality type riff, a riff to substitute for the chord A. 7.2, another way of implying A. And then the other one is going to be that arpeggio shape, 7.3 we mentioned at the beginning. Okay, so that's that over here. Now, end of the day, if we know where to find your chord shapes, I can do 1A here for example. Then maybe a riff. Then a 7th chord over here. D7 chord there, change the sound of the D7 chord there, maybe a slide back because it's cool, back to your A riff, another A riff, an E dominant chord as well, coming down to the D, so you're looking at your 3rd line, E to D, nice little chromatic pass by there at fret number 6. Back to A, maybe a riff, an E7. So you can have some fun now and you can do something like this. This will be a possible one of hundreds of thousands of different variations on a typical 12-bar blues, putting in some chords, different ways to do it. And you could do this 3 and 4 and... Sounds quite cool. And that's basically what I want us to walk away with. So we're going to learn that every time there's an A, you can play an A chord. 9th we're going to do in the next study. You can do an A minor pentatonic scale, which is going to go slow motion. And everything is going to work for you. Now if there's any questions or queries, drop me a WhatsApp. There will be a follow through on this video. And have an awesome day. Take care. Thanks very much.